G'day Supercoachers and welcome back for yet another episode. My name's Scott, known as Supercoach Reaper, and in today's video I will be bringing you my top 6 prediction for the defenders. I've recently finished my premium forward videos from about a week ago, so if you haven't seen that yet, check that out before seeing this video. Now there's a few players that have just missed out on my top 6 selection, and I guarantee you that a few of them will be in a lot of teams this year. I will start off with my 6th ranked defender for the 2021 season, and it's a split between Sam Doherty and Caleb Daniel, but in the end I've gone with Sam Doherty from the Carlton Blues. This one's a little bit risky, but he has so much potential, and I think most of us have forgotten how good Doherty is off halfback and through the midfield, especially on the wing with his ball use and his drive and his execution and decision making. So Doherty comes in at 496,000 this year and is only in 6% of teams, which is kind of mind-boggling in a way, but he did have quite a poor 2020 season. So after returning from his very serious ACL injury in 2020, he played 16 of a possible 17 games for the year, and he finished the season averaging 87 points, which also includes 13 points from his last round when he did his calf muscle. I guess a lot of you out there would remember that because I think that may have been grand final week, and you know, if you had him, you probably lost, meaning he may be on the never again list for many super coaches. But not mine. I didn't have him. I traded him out before grand final week for that exact reason. He wasn't 100% fit. That's another story. I'm carrying on. We'll continue on here. He started the season like a house on fire. He had scores of 117, 93, 122, and 185 in round 4 off 34 possessions against the Bombers. What hurt the most after that 185 was I traded him in that next week and he was only able to score 2 more tons for the remainder of the year. 2. A big kick in the guts for many fantasy owners. But like I said, it was his first year back from the ACL injury. Taken a while to work into it. But I feel like his role changed a little bit. I can't really remember that far back at the moment. But he wasn't gathering as many possessions off half back, so he didn't have the real impact that he was probably after. Let's not forget that Doherty is one of the best defenders in the league, scoring-wise. In 2016 and 2017, he averaged 109 and 115. That firmly puts him into top 3 defenders for every year over the past 5 years. If we look at his scores back in 2017 when he averaged 115, he posted scores of 149, 132, 145, 153, 142, and his lowest score was only a 75, and after that was an 82. So he's pretty consistent, and he did not score below 100 that often. He did have minor surgery in the off season, but he has returned to training earlier than expected, so it's likely he'll get 8 weeks of full training in before round 1, which means he'll be pretty close to full fitness. I'm unsure on what role Doherty's going to play this year, if it's going to be predominantly off half back or is it going to be along the wing. Depends. With the addition of Zach Williams, he'll probably spend a bit of time off half back, but will take Cade Simpson's spot after his retirement. And Tom Williamson is in there as well, but Doherty should be one of the prime ball users coming out of the defensive 50. I'm hoping we see Doherty average similar numbers to what he did in 2016 and 17, and therefore I've put him in as my number 6 defender this season. I expect him to average somewhere between 100 to 108 points. Bit of a difference there, but he has the potential to average so much higher than a lot of defenders this season, but he also might not live up to the expectations, but I can see him hovering around that 100 mark if he doesn't have the best of season. My number 5 defender is Luke McDonald from North Melbourne. 512,900 and just 7% of teams. Lower than I expected, but understandable. He's pretty much the unknown of my top 6 this year. I always expected Lukey Mack to break out eventually, but I thought that was going to be in the midfield, not off half back. So he moved to the back line in round 8 last year, and he posted scores of 122, 136, 95, 138, 119, 144, 94, 84, 121, and 131 with an average of 118 points. Now that is phenomenal for a defender. He was brilliant. He was like the seagull number 2 of the competition. It was great to see. He really stood up last year, and he was the main ball user when exiting the defensive 50, which has been a pretty big problem with North Melbourne over the last few years with turnovers and Poor execution by foot from our halfback flankers. Won't mention any names. With a very young and talented midfield brigade there at North Melbourne at the moment with LDU, Simpkin, Will Phillips, Ben Cunnington, Jay Anderson and a few others, it's unlikely that Luke McDonald will ever enter that midfield again. His best role is suited off halfback. He can lock down on smalls and he can win a lot of the ball. What also is a big positive is he takes the kick-outs. Now, my only worry there is Aiden Core has come over from the GWS Giants and he is a pretty handy ball user as well. He took many kick-outs at the Giants over the past couple of years, so he may take a few, but I still think Luke McDonald will take the majority of them. Little concerning, but nothing to really worry about, I think. It was his highest Supercoach average over his career. He finished the season averaging 95 points, which was his best since his 83 in 2017. I can understand why he's only in 7% of teams, as he's really only posted 10 really good scores over the course of his career. But if those 10 games are something to go off for this season, then he must be in a lot more teams than 7% come round one. I expect Mac to average somewhere between 105 and possibly as high as 115. A bit optimistic, but he has the potential to do that if he has the same role this year. Number 4 defender is the high-flying Luke Ryan from the Fremantle Dockers. 576,000 and in 7% of teams. He averaged a career high 107 in 2020 and played all 17 matches. So the high-flying intercept defender usually goes pretty unnoticed and untouched throughout the Supercoach season. That's pretty evident right now if I look at his ownership numbers. He's currently in only 7% of teams. I should expect that to get to at least 15 at the minimum. He finished second in total points, only behind the Seagull Jakey Lloyd in 2020, which is a pretty big accomplishment for the 25-year-old. Now the problems that you're probably thinking of now is that he has been known to be a pretty big yo-yo scorer. He fluctuates a lot, 140s down to 60s, and that inconsistency really puts off a lot of owners. But in 2020, the consistency in his game elevated to a new level. He posted 13 out of 17 tons with game highs of 131, 142 and 162, which are some pretty big scores. One of the main things that I do look for in a defender is whether or not he takes the kickouts. So a bit like Luke McDonald, Luke Ryan takes 90% of the kickouts down at Fremantle, and that just gives him that extra possession, especially if it's an effective disposal. He's also an intercept king, plays similar to the role of Jordan Ridley at Essendon, which elevates his scoring potential as well. It was his first season averaging over 100, so there is some doubt whether he can back that up. But coming into the prime of his career and after the stellar season that he had last year, it's hard to see him going backwards. I expect Luke Ryan to average somewhere between 107 to 112, somewhere in that range there. So it looks like the Joel Hamling, the key defender, will be back by round 1, which should release Luke Ryan even further. He has been trapped playing as a key defender at times, which has really hurt his scoring, where he can't roam free and play as the number 1 loose defender in the back line there. But if he's fit round 1, Ryan won't have to lock down that key defender and he should play pretty loosely, which means more marking, more disposals, leading to better scores. Defender number 3 is Lachie Whitfield from the GWS Giants. His price is 561,000 this year and he's in 37% of teams. That ownership number is pretty high, but for the last 3 to 4 years, it's been around that mark for Whitfield anyway. His last 3 seasons, he's averaged 100, 111, and in 2020, he averaged 105. But that was impacted with a score of 8 in round 3 when he was concussed. So take that into consideration as well. In those 3 years, he has missed a few games to injury, but he has posted 33 scores over 100 out of 55 matches. And most importantly, only 3 of those scores were below 80 points. Only 3. So the ceiling's very high and his low scores are never too low. Every week we know what we're going to get from Whitfield. He's a hard runner, he's a good ball user, he gets a lot of the peel and he hits targets. And like I said, he has a pretty high ceiling. So over the last 3 years, he's posted scores of 167, 148, 159, 152 and 170. Mammoth. Just remember that he's only played 2 full seasons out of 7 years in the AFL system, so something to keep note of, but not a big kick in the guts. I've penciled in Whitfield for an average between 108 and 115. Defender number 2. I've discussed this defender in one of my previous videos, so I won't go into too much detail here, but I've put him just ahead of Whitfield due to him playing 100% midfield in 2021, especially after his dominant display in the back end of the 2020 season. His name, of course, Rory Laird. Oink, oink. all day. 564,000 and in 40% of teams. Always a high ownership player, that's for sure. I've had him for 5 years in a row. This year will mark the 6th. No concern whatsoever. He's aggressive, durable, consistent, and loves winning his own football. He's great in tight where he can release the ball by hand to the likes of Matty Crouch on the outside. He's pretty much just as big as a lock as Jakey Lloyd. Rarely drops below 85 points, always hovers in the top 6 defenders every year. I'm pretty certain he will finish as the 2nd highest scoring defender this year. And that leads us to defender number 1. I guess if you're still watching, you all know who it's going to be. The man himself, the gull, Lloyd, as BT would say. Absolute weapon, 656,000, 50% of teams. Pretty high ownership, and it makes complete sense. Behind Lachie Neale, he is the must-have player of Supercoach this year. No question about it. Coming off a year of averaging 122 points, he only had one score below 100 all year, and that score came in round 1. So he had 16 rounds in a row where he scored over 100 points. I don't think any other player in the competition did that. He loves cleaning up the scraps in the back half of the 50, and it seems like his teammates look for him at every opportunity. He's averaged close to 28 disposals 4 years in a row now, so he wins a lot of the ball and he has reliable foot skills. There's pretty much no needed explanations to justify why Lloyd is the number 1 pick in my backline this year. I won't really delve too much into it. The only concern is here his hefty price tag of 650,000. Huge price tag, 100% worth it. Will not go into this year without him. He's too bloody good to pass up. Alright guys, and that's pretty much a wrap. They are my top 6 defenders of 2021. I give honourable mentions to Caleb Daniel, Tom Stewart, Jordan Ridley and Braden Maynard, who just missed out, but it's definitely possible that they could finish in the top 6 defenders. I'd just like to also thank everyone who commented on my previous video with the league invitation. It filled up pretty quickly. Just keep an eye out over the next couple of weeks. I may start up a new one if I get some interest. Just unsure whether or not I'll get a further 17 people into a new league, but time will tell. And as always, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Cheers guys.